Hi everyone, and welcome to TLC. Thank you for joining me. This is an audiobook series, meaning we will be presenting two factual evidences of His Imperial Majesty, Haile Selassie. The first as Elijah, whom the Bible prophesied about. Bible verse, Malachi 4, verse 5 reads, "Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes." The second is the name given to him at birth, Rastafari, leading to his crowning as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords in 1930, the 2nd of November. Bible verse Revelations 19 verse 16 reads, "And he has a name written on his robe and on his thigh, King of Kings and Lord of Lords."
The part 2, as promised, is the Lion of Judah. This was presented by Prince Ermais Sahle Selassie at the Library of Congress on the 12th of September 2010. Good afternoon, friends, scholars, distinguished guests. It is my great honor and privilege to be here with you today in the renowned section of the United States Library of Congress. African and Middle Eastern Division. To begin with, I will share with you an ancient Ethiopian saying, "We must study the past and understand the present to charter a better future for us all." I must tell you that I am not a theology and make no pretense at being so. Indeed, perhaps many of you already possess extensive knowledge of today's subject, the origins and religious symbolism of the Lion of Judah. Consequently, I will initially introduce the subject and hopefully end with a robust question and answer period, which I anticipate will prove both entertaining and enlightening for us all. It is with great reverence, humility, and some concern I come before you to discuss and explore this topic. My concern springs from the certain and harsh knowledge that whenever poetry and magic of myth is interpreted as biography, history, or science, it is frequently morally wounded. The living images become only remote facts of a distant time or sky, and it's never difficult to demonstrate that a science in history, mythology is in a large part of absurd. Thus, when a civilization begins to reinterpret its mythology in this way, as biographical history or science, the life goes out of its temple, becomes museums or tourist attractions, and the link between the two perspectives is dissolved in the modern times. Arguably, such light has even descended on the Holy Bible and was in the Old and the New Testament. A great part of the Christian movement, the late and renowned American mythologist, writer, lecturer Joseph Campbell, has observed that symbols are simply the vehicles of communication and that they must not be mistaken for the final the turner of the reference. Thus, no matter how attractive or impressive symbols may seem, they remain but convenient means accommodated to the understanding, hence the personality or personalities of God. Whenever represented in the Trinitarian, dualistic, or Utilitarian terms, picture, literature, or verbally as documented fact, a political vision, no one should attempt to read or interpret them as the final thing. The abiding challenge of the religion is to keep the symbol translucent so that it may not block out the very light that it's supposed to convey, for then alone do we know God. God writes in Thomas, when we believe that He is far above all man can possibly think of, mistaking a simple vehicle for His turner can lead to spilling not only of valueless ink, but also valueless blood. To bring the images back to life, one must seek not interesting applications to modern affairs, but illuminating hints from the inspired past when these have found vast areas of half-dead icon disclosed again, the enduring and permanently human meaning in the Jewish tradition. The earliest reference to the line of Judah comes from Genesis, in the first book of the Hebrew Bible, the Torah, and the Christian Old Testament. The book of Genesis, generally considered to have been written sometime between 1400 and 1440 BC. In Genesis chapter 14, verse 9, when blessing his son, Judah, the Jewish patriot, Jacob reference to Judah as the young lion. Thus, here we first note the lion becoming metaphorically and symbolically paired with Judah and the Jewish. It is also from this text that the line of Judah further evolves into a tutorial section of office, defender and leader of Jewish tribe, which itself becomes the basis of considerable messianic expectation and speculation and early Judaism indeed. King David, the Jewish Messiah, becomes extractably astrology linked in the Judeo-Christian tradition. As the reference for the Lion of Judah, we frequently find lion gates in America, archaeological ruins from Israel to the gates of Ethiopia, Aksumite, and the pious palaces and temples to the Atis sites in Turkey, to Babylonian and the Persian sites in Iraq, and Assyrian and Egyptian sites. It was widespread and popular symbol of the royalty, as the lion was seen by many as the king, or the Ramses II's line as the successful emperors, including up until the time of my late grandfather, the last emperor, Haile Selassie I. In ancient Jewish art, we often find evidence depicted in perspective rules guarding the Ark of the Covenant, the chapel entrances, as in the sculpture of the ancient synagogues at Sardis, Harizon, or Purim in Palestinian. In many of the Masonic dating from the early Byzantine era in medieval Jewish art, the lion is commonly depicted leaning up on either side of the tree of life, next to the crown. Thus, it is heraldic shield replaced by the symbol of God, and the lions are seen as serving the King of all kings. In modern times, the Jewish heraldic representation of the city of Jerusalem remains the venerable Lion of Judah. In the subsequent Christian tradition, the lion allegory persists in the New Testament book of Revelation, chapter 5, verse 5, and one of the elders said unto me, Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has prevailed to open the book and to open the 7 seals. Although the dominion images of Jesus in Revelation is the slain but now the triumph lion, the Apostle John, Ethiopia continues to employ the part of powerful and traditional lion symbols in Revelation chapter 5 verse 5. It proclaims that the Lion of tribe of Judah has already triumphed. Not through final judgment on the wicked, but rather through his atoning death and opening up the possibility for all of us to be saved. Christ, therefore, is worthy to unseal the judgments quo because he has already achieved salvation through his death as the slain sacrificial Lamb of God who takes away the world's sin. Theologians generally considered the symbol is to read and understand as direct reference to Jesus, where he is regarded as the Lion of the tribe of Judah and the root of David in Christianity. The Lion of Judah is a symbol and is commonly used to reference Jesus Christ. In fact, many Christians ministries use the symbol as the embedded or prefix to the names. To the Christian names believe that while the ancient tribe of Levi prepared priests, that of Judah was the tribe of kings. Jesus is believed to be descendants of the tribe of Judah. Jesus is commonly referenced to as the overcoming one and the one who qualifies to open the scrolls and the 7 seals. According to the book of Revelations, Jesus was the sacrificial lamb and the Lion of Judah, the prophecy of the coming of the Lord to judge the world as the Lion of Judah is clear throughout Revelations. As the earth's oldest independent nation, Ethiopia traces its unbroken history back to more than 5 millenniums.
Done dizzy, finest finger.
The earliest records of Ethiopia around 3000 BC, just prior to the Egyptian Old Kingdom, comes from Egypt. Egyptian traders who refer to the land south of Nubia is the first known Egyptian voyage to have occurred in the 25th century BC under the reign of Pharaoh. The most famous Egyptian expedition comes during the reign of Queen Haj, probably around 1495 BC, as the expedition was memorized in the intricate carved reliefs on the temple of Der al-Bukhari at Davis. There are also numerous references to Ethiopia in the Old Testament of the Hebrew and the Christian Bibles, as the Old Testament is to the Hebrews, the Quran is to the Islams, the Magas, or the Book of the Glory of the Kings, is to the Ethiopians. It is the ancient and revered repository of our country's millennia, all the national and religious history, as well as our constitution more than 700 years old, in its presence in the written form of the Nagas. From its appearance, millennium-old oral tradition and details the history and origin of the Islamic decline of Ethiopia's kings. It is also regarded to be the defiant and authority on the history or conversation of Ethiopia to Christianity. The Salami dynasty of Atiba is so named by the virtue of the dynastic descendants from the union of the venerable Jewish Messiah, King Solomon of Israel, and the Queen of Sheba. More than 900 years BC by Ethiopian's dynasty. Tradition, all monarchs must trace the lineage back to Menelik, I, who was offspring of King Solomon and Queen of Sheba in 1913. My late grandfather took the title His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie, the King of Kings, conquering Lion of Tribe of Judah, the elect of God. These titles had been traditionally given to His Imperial Majesty, recognized the Old Testament. The emphasis of Ethiopia's Christianity and to declare the region's sacred duty and subservience to God, Ethiopia shall stretch her hands unto God in Ethiopia's tradition. Menelik had returned as a young man to visit Father Solomon in Jerusalem and was regularly received when Menelik departed to Ethiopia. King Solomon, who was very pleased to the regal manner and demeanour of his royal offspring, ordered the chief priests to an advisor of kings of the kingdom to send their first sons with him for the benefit of Ethiopia's crown, which would mean Menelik would have eventually inherited amongst these Tasdik, the high priest, who is claimed took the Ark of Covenant with him that was concealed from Menelik, who did not part until he had returned to Ethiopia. The symbolism of the Ark is particularly important. In Ethiopia Orthodox Church, every single church must contain a replica of the Ark before it can be consecrated, one of the most important dates in the calendar of Ethiopian Orthodox Church. The Ark, or the replica, is wrapped, installed and carried in great processional reverence, the Kebra Nagas. The Ark, or the replica, is wrapped, installed and carried in a great processional reference. The Kebra Nagas relates this numerous story of how the Ark of the Covenant came to Ethiopia, where it is believed to be enshrined in a special cathedral at the Chapel of the 10 Tables, constructed next to the Church of St. Mary of Zion in Axum. It is reported that the Ark was moved to St. Mary's into the chapel because of the divine heat from the tablets. It cracked the stones of its previous sanctuary. Indeed, my late grandmother, Empress Menen, had paid part of the construction cost of the new chapel. The Church of St. Mary of Zion in Axum is a venerable icon of the Ethiopian religion belief. It is also the most important church in Ethiopia. St. Mary is dedicated to Holy Mother Mary, who is the Christian tradition was the vessel of Christ, thus the fulfillment of religious prophecy. Are hence believed that when Mary was exiled in Egypt, that she had visited Ethiopia. The original St. Mary of Zion Church was built in the 4th century AD and has been destroyed and rebuilt again. Ethiopia is a respected and sophisticated empire. In the time of the New Testament, in fact, the Ethiopian Enoch in the 8th chapter of Acts, the apostles returning from a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, is the first Ethiopian to be baptized by the apostle Philip. We learned that he is the keeper of all the treasures of the Queen of Sheba. Thus, the Enoch is actually identified as the Queen of Sheba, a position of supreme confidence in the royal household. It is likely that the Queen of Sheba was told of this unusual religious encounter when she returned, and thus the news of the Christian gospel had reached Ethiopia. Long before the official adoption of Christianity as a religion in Rome, in the 4th century, written records from about 800 BC to the 1st century BC are confined to the names of the kings found on the carvings. However, the action period is relatively well documented. The Aksumite kingdom represents a significant peak of Ethiopian civilization, which spans the era of conversion of the ruling dynasty to Christianity in the 4th century AD. It was also considered a very advanced civilization by the Roman Empire. In fact, the Roman Emperor Constantine had declared that citizens of Axum were to be considered equal with the citizens of Rome. Constantine, and as the Adenian King of Kings, made Christianity the respective religion in their kingdoms in the ancient and reverent tradition of the Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity. There have been three traditional symbols of the demonstration and manifestation of humanities into the relationship and connection with the divine, and that these are called the three signs. The first is the Temple of Solomon in Israel, which according to the Bible is the first temple in Jerusalem, being constructed around 830 to BC. During its history, it was repeatedly attacked. In fact, and according to the Jewish religion, tradition before its final destruction by the Romans in 17 AD, the temple had in Solomon's time been respiratory for the fabled Ark of Covenant. Subsequently, Jewish scriptures say that the Ark will remain hidden until God gathers his people together again. The Jewish faith today believe that the Temple of Solomon will and must be rebuilt before the coming of the Antichrist. Indeed, contemporary Orthodox Jewish pray 3 times a day for the restoration of the Solomon's Temple. Heads of the Orthodox faith in Ethiopia believe that according to the prophecy, when the temple is rebuilt again, one door is reserved for the Lion of Judah, for Christ to open it up again. The second, Zion, whichever I have already discussed in some details, is Mary, the mother of Christ, and church at St. Mary of Zion in Axum. The third sign is the Lion of Judah, who represents the return of Christ in the fulfillment and biblical prophecy of his coming to rule again since the 4th century AD. All Ethiopian sovereigns have given their crown to the church St. Mary of Zion. In traditional to a head, the submission to this belief is the fact that the Ethiopian imperial crest thus depicts an empty throne waiting in expectation for the return of Christ, the rule of the right and justice. The Rastafarians is a contemporary monolith, one artistic political religion movement which had evolved in the slums of Kingston, Jamaica, from fundamental Christian roots and culture, in Trenchtown being an overwhelming environment of poverty, depression, racism, and class discrimination. Rastafarians is black pride, freedom from oppression, and hope of the return to the African homeland. In the 1930s onwards, the Rastafarian men developed his own distinctive style of language, hairstyle, art, and music, although popularly believed to have originated on November 2nd, 1930, with the investiture of the Emperor Haile Selassie's Rastafarians have actually been inspired since the 1920s. Nationally movement, founded by Marcus Garvey, a Jamaican publicist, organized black nationalist considered by his followers as a prophet and the second John the Baptist.
Done dizzy, the finest finger.
Though there is a significant variation within the Rasta movement, there is certainly no formal one, singular organization. Undeniable, some Rastafarians has a way of life more than the religion rulers. To claim dimension, but encourage one another to seek faith and inspiration within themselves, the central and unity theme. However, of this highly diverse movement, an enduring belief in the divinity and messiahship of it being Emperor Haile Selassie, the influence of Jamaican culture, resistance to oppression and pride in the African heritage. For Rastafarians, Haile Selassie is considered to be Jah and God, and is seen in both the incarnation of Christ and the lion mentioned in the Bible book of Revelation. He is therefore referred to as the Lion of Judah. Beyond biblical metaphor, Rasta also seen as the lion as being the symbolic strength against oppression that they have endured over time. Thus, for Rastafarians, the lion is both symbolic and iconic. The lion can be found on the Rastafarians flag and on many other items associated with the Rastafarians faith. Rastafari comes from the pre-regional title given to Emperor Haile Selassie, meaning head or leader Tafari. Before he took the name, Haile Selassie adopting from the lion symbol of the biblical Lion of Judah, from which detailed Solomonic dynasty is descended. Rastafarians believe that the lion represents Emperor Haile Selassie as the King of Kings and reveals the improving lineage of Emperor from the 12 tribes of Israel. The most famous Rastafarian, Bob Marley, through his unique Rasta representative and music style, painted compelling European pictures of how life should be lived and how the world could one day become great. The Angolan Christianity was an accomplished contemporary author, Lewis, has made marvelous inspired use of the traditional religion symbol and produced iconic 7 books movie series written between 1949 and 1954. The Chronicles of Nania. The entire Nania story is about Jesus Christ, and that he had offered the lion as a lamb as the answer to the question, what would Christ, the Son of God, be like? Had he been born in the land of Nania instead of being born in Bethlehem? The angelic Lewis has richly infused his Nania series with very Christianity beliefs. For instance, the theme The Voyage of Dawn Trader, the third of his books that had been made into a film, employs very Christian themes of temptation, sin, and redemption through the indirect testimony of Lewis and rolling fiction and theatre. We are provided content interpreting of the ancient religion symbols, which even uniquely perhaps provide the perfect example of Joseph Campbell's thesis. They are simply vehicles of communication. In concluding, I would like to tell you that I have tried to tread lightly and carefully as possible when engaging with conversion my personal appreciation of these cherished and vulnerable symbols of tradition. Traditionally, religion understands and agrees that I have done no serious or reputational damage. Indeed, is my fondest desire that at least some of you will be motivated to continue to explore this profound, transcendent mystery, for they are undeniably inspiring and worthy of further consideration and study. For Christian Ethiopians, our transcendent religions, symbols are linked to our constant and reminders of our rich Judeo-Christian Islamic heritage and past. As such, these precious religions' icon in dealing with us today is the Imperial icon that within holy sanctuaries of many Japan Orthodox churches and serve as a constant and enduring reminders that we are all spiritually kingsmen with a universal duty and obedience to God. After all, it is to the mystery of the universe and presents us a consistent image of the order of the cosmos. It is also myth and validate and supports a specific moral order, informing us of our proper governance. and calm and conduct of our lives, and transport us through the passage and crisis of life. Ultimately, we must each find our own path through the forest and reach for our own transcendent personal spirituality by studying the poetry of life. It is only in this way that we come to personal contentment and understanding the heart, as Joseph Campbell has reminded us in the beginning of humanity in his comments on spiritual kinsmanship. My late grandfather has once said, in the mystic tradition of different religions, we have the remarkable unity of spirit where whatever religion that they may be profess they are spiritual kinsmen, while the different religions in their historic bones bind us to limited groups and militant against the development of loyalty to the world community. The mystics have already stood for the fellowship of humanity in harmony with the spirit of the mystics of age gone by. No one should question the faith of others, for no human being can judge the ways of God. I would like to add that unless and until we begin to internalize these wise precepts of spiritual kinsmen, loyalty, unity, and spirit, light and governance and leadership will forever remain an illusionary, unattainable reality. Thank you again for your kind and generous intention. Wow, so guys, that was the text from the grandson of Emperor Haile Selassie. He's given us a full detailed evidence of the title of the Lion of Judah, the role of His Majesty. This text for me clears up Ethiopia's history, Haile Selassie's leadership, his role as the elect of God, giving us a unique insight and accurate information coming directly from the Solomonic dynasty line. So the next part is going to be part 3. We're looking at Emperor Haile Selassie's his self-autobiography book called My Life and Ethiopia's Progress by Haile Selassie. Thank you all for joining me on this audiobook. Until next time, one love, take care, bye-bye.